It seems very strange to say this in pre-season, but I'm very relieved by what I saw on Wednesday. Not the result so much necessarily, but the application, the performance against a very fine side that's ramping up for their preseason as well. And at times we resembled the very team that got us into Champions League this season, and still without three of our key pillar players. So that's a relief, and I realize that we are evaluating and gradually paring down a much larger squad than we're probably used to at this time of the year. And I think some questions are finally being answered as well. And I'm also very relieved I didn't drop a ton of bills to go to the United States, because I was seriously considering it. Let's review Villa 3, Athletic Club 2. Welcome inside the parlor. You know, that entire USA tour left me feeling very underwhelmed and a little bit unsure, and I get we're assessing a very large squad here. We're playing a couple of teams that are in their mid-seasons. It's hot, there's travel. There's always going to be a bit of a disjointed vibe to it. But form, particularly Premier League form, is not some kind of lever that you can just pull or button you can push, and now we're taking it seriously. Now we're ready for the regular season. And what bothered me about the game in Chicago particularly was that we couldn't even keep short spells of possession, and that's kind of been our bread and butter under Unai Emery. When it is not happening for you in possession, going forward, in attack, which was the majority of the U.S. tour, in fact, I felt it got progressively worse as it went on, well then, at least be sharp and retain the football so you're not chasing it around. But especially in Chicago, we kept trying these intricate little passes that we could not pull off. We'd lose it, and then we were chasing the game again. And as much as Unai Emery says, these games are about getting information, and I agree, this is a process we're going through. If you ask 100 coaches, including Unai Emery, would you rather go into a regular season winning games, showing some promise in attack, or denying chances at your own end? 100 of them will tell you I'd rather win and look at least decent going into the regular season than the alternative. It does make you wonder a little bit whether all that transatlantic and North American travel is worth it. I mean, I realize Villa probably would have received a very tidy appearance fee, and we would have been introducing ourselves to new audiences, although I'm not sure how much conversion would have been taking place if you're a newcomer saying, hey, I've heard about this Aston Villa, and that's what you got served up in those three markets. But on the glass half full side of things, you know, adversity and being humbled at times does build character, and it conditions you for later on in the season when the fixtures will bunch up with all these competitions we're in. And if we do have another good Premier League campaign or a good run in the Champions League or any cup competition, we may look back and say getting out of our comfort zone and being humbled a little bit in North America was a very good thing. I mentioned on the previous show how fascinated I am with Athletic Club de Bilbao for the fact that they only play Basque players, which does limit their competitive advantage, but it hasn't affected them because here they are in Europa League this coming season. And the only other club in the world that I think does that is Chivas de Guadalajara, I think, who only recruit Mexican-born players. No Nico Williams for this game. He's still just coming off his holiday after Spain's victory. And he has now decided, apparently, to stay with his beloved club that includes his brother, Inaki. But at some point, his agent is going to say, Nico, you have but one career opportunity in your life, and you need to cash in for your kids, for your grandkids, for your parents. And so far, Aston Villa has made Nico Williams the biggest offer that he's ever received, and that includes Barcelona and PSG. Some broad general overview observations from the game on Wednesday, like the one in New Jersey against RB Leipzig. The bulk of that starting group, with a couple of exceptions, including Jacob Ramsey, went the entire hour. And what was interesting to me, and in fact, the entire sports science and load management strategy in this preseason has been very interesting to me because we've had such a big squad and a lot of games in quick succession, is that the sharpness really started to drop off in and around the 57th, 58th minute. Ironically, we score just around the hour mark, and then that first group exits and the next group comes in. So what I'll be curious to know is how they're going to approach the sports science aspect of Saturday. Because again, it's another quick turnaround. We have 3 internationals finally coming back to our group that are going to need minutes. How are we going to approach it from a load management standpoint? Because I don't know whether all those guys that started this game on Wednesday are 90-minute ready yet. They are really going to ramp things up until the West Ham game. One thing that still concerns me a little bit is our ability to defend a set piece. And yes, it's only preseason, but this was a concern last year, especially at the end of last year. And on the 1-1 goal, we conceded from a corner, and I hate to pile on the birthday boy, Matty Cash, because everybody seems to love to do it, but often it is that first action, that first contact that creates calamity, and this header did his teammates no favors. Now, I'm going to have some more quick and random thoughts from the Wednesday game in just a moment, but Paul Handsaker and the 24/7 Services crew, the presenting sponsor of this program, well, there is no preseason for these folks. They're always in mid-season form. I suppose there is a pre-leaky roof season, but they've already prepared for that by taking courses and getting licensed for all these new roofing products that are coming on the market now. This is one of many projects that are being undertaken right now, a residential bathroom. You see, this I can do. The destruction part, oh, that's no problem. Putting it back together, no chance. I can't wait to show you what the after looks like on this. But here is an after from the Castle Vale Residents Association and a room they just redid. Learn how to dance the flamenco like Unai Emery on Tuesday nights. No, not really. But this is just a great example of the dramatic change that you can make, and at a very reasonable quote with 24/7 Services, which, by the way, is a family business loaded with hardcore Aston Villa fans. And I absolutely love it when Villa fans support other Villa fans, because the one word that I think of when I hear Aston Villa Football Club is family, a big family. Now, if you ever run into an electrical, plumbing, or roofing emergency, remember that I always put the phone numbers in the descriptions of these videos. For any other non-emergency project, you can always get in touch with Paul and his team through their spanky website. Random thoughts. Jacob Ramsey. I realize the staff is being extremely cautious and conservative with his minutes, but boy, did he look fresh as a daisy. And when you look at him closely, it appears as though he's done a lot of work in the gym to bulk up and just fill out a little bit. I see a far more balanced and sturdier unit now. And it is clear that he and Morgan Rogers are on some kind of wavelength together. And I think that when we look back on this upcoming season, these two future full English internationals are going to have contributed far more to this upcoming season than even we could have imagined. Maybe the biggest question of this offseason is who is going to replace the goals that left with Diaby and Luiz, a total of 15, 4 from the penalty spot. Is it unreasonable to expect that between Jacob Ramsey and Morgan Rogers, they could combine for at least 11 non-penalty goals? I mean, Ramsey managed to score 1 from 16 appearances in which he was hobbled for most of them, and Rogers scored 3 goals in just 11 appearances last season. Remember, Rogers just turned 22 in July. Ramsey turned 23 in May. 2 young, hungry punks who are loaded with riz and confidence right now. Jaden Philogene showed us once again that he knows where the net is. And I'll be very curious to know how many minutes he accrues over the coming season. Like, what happens if he has a career growth spurt similar to what Morgan Rogers had last season that comes with confidence and coherent coaching. And because he looks so comfortable on either flank, well, that makes him a pretty good first option coming off the bench. Arguably the biggest surprise of this preseason so far, and there's only one game left in it, is Lamar Bogarde. He was the only player to go 90 minutes on Wednesday, and he did not really put a foot wrong. Now, defending is job one. He clearly has good game IQ. He knows when to step, and that's a pretty good indication. But our Lamar is also not afraid to play a penetrating through ball. And the advantage this player has is that he could slide into midfield if need be. So I'm just wondering, when we think about those eligible players that are club trained to meet the Champions League roster criteria, because I believe the three we have are Ramsey, Archer, and Philogene, Bogarde could be that fourth guy, considering now that Kane Kessler-Hayden's gone on loan with Preston and Josh Feeney's gone on to loan with Shrewsbury. And while Lamar Bogarde was playing 90 minutes, Diego Carlos was nowhere to be seen. There are no suspensions in the preseason, so this is 2 straight games now where he wasn't even in the squad, and the last time, of course, was the sending off in the first half against RB Leipzig. I've said numerous times on this show that because of his wages and his contract situation, another of these players who has a deal ending in June of 2026, he is a very suitable candidate to move on. And I know that Fulham was kicking some tires. He's still revered in Sevilla. Something feels like it's up here. The same could be said for Alex Moreno, who was left out of the squad on Wednesday. And sometimes a manager says, Alex, I know what you offer. Let's see what else we have. Well, unfortunately, what else we have is 2 pretty good players in Ian Maatsen and Luca Dean. Luca Dean spent part of the day rubbishing a transfer rumor that he was off to Galatasaray. Ian Maatsen, by the way, is a very tidy and elusive type fullback, totally different from Luca Dean. And you want that. I like to have other profiles and ingredients because sometimes you need a horse for this course. I would be absolutely thrilled if we go into this Premier League season with Ian Maatsen and Luca Dean as our left fullback options. Referee Rob Jones is consistent. He's shit in both the pre and regular season. Because the last time I checked the FIFA laws, I believe you are not allowed to shoulder barge a player from behind square in the numbers as they're breaking in on goal. At least that's how I interpret the law. On that note, Kosta Nedeljkovic made one of the most spectacular runs in recent preseason history. He went so fast, he actually lost some of his teammates, which forced him to basically go for goal, something that he still needs to work on. Now, Unai Emery spent part of last week talking this player down because he was cautioning us on the fact that he's 18 years of age and he needs time. But this chap could get a speeding ticket if he sprinted through a school zone. He has gears, and I don't feel edgy somehow with him defensively because he has such good recovery pace. Cameron Archer. He just loves to tiptoe and dance along the border between world class and upper championship. Now, that first goal that was called offside was still fantastic because he had the pace, he rounded the goalkeeper, he tucks it away as he seems to always. The game winner, though, was absolutely brilliant. First, to clock the run, and he timed it because he was on his own side of midfield. Then he manages to somehow outmuscle and maintain control of the football while being held back. He makes a wide detour around the goalkeeper, baiting him out initially, and then from a very awkward angle finds nothing but twine. And then in games, he can vanish. My gut feeling on this player is that he still does not understand where to be without the football. He doesn't know where to stand. He doesn't know what to do. And I think that probably could change with some tutelage. The question is he onboarding that tutelage? Because that's a huge part of being a professional. Because what he does in the actual penalty area with the ball is ruthless and lethal. This What happens next situation with Cameron Archer might be the most fascinating decision that Unai Emery is going to have to make in this preseason. Joe Gauci restored in me and probably his teammates and some of the staff some faith coming off of a rather shaky outing at Columbus. He made 2 very important first half saves, and I know his goalkeeper coach will nitpick on a couple of finer details that he wants to work on the palm position of his gloves because those rebounds will want to go wide of the immediate danger area. But again, those are finer details. He also looked very composed on the ball, which is a great sign. And really, was there much he could have done on the goal he allowed? I'm not convinced that Samuel Illing Jr. will be with the team come September. It just hasn't happened for him in the preseason. And despite the fact that he did make some meaningful contributions to Juventus last year, our left side is already pretty strong. And if we bring in another body, maybe a marquee attacking type, well, who makes way? Because we've already seen Lewis Dobbin move to West Bromwich Albion on loan. And keeping in mind that Illing Jr. doesn't turn 21 until this October, he's got to play games. And I just think his game IQ and his Premier League type experience needs to catch up with his physical maturity, which is impressive and why we bought him. For the first time this preseason, Leon Bailey looked like his jinky Jamaican self, able to actually run at players and have room to do stuff now and again, because that's not been the case. Looks like he's been in a phone booth through most of the preseason, and I realized that he and his teammates just were that little bit sharper as we get ever closer to opening day. Obviously, the conditions didn't hurt because in North America, you're breathing through your ring piece after 7 minutes. And I also wonder, because we've seen it a lot in this preseason, are we going to try to switch play faster and more often? Is that going to be a hallmark of this coming season, which could really benefit Leon Bailey? And by the way, if he improves on last year, 10 goals and 9 assists, that could be really helpful for us. I had an inkling that Jhon Duran might not report to Bodymore Heath on Monday, but this photo beautifully exemplifies the awkward situation we find ourselves in. And although Jhon Duran has been given the number 9 in the meantime, this situation needs to be resolved sooner than later. And although I've never been through one happily, touch wood, this does remind me a little bit of an ugly divorce. Both parties hate each other. They've engaged in lawyers to try to sort it out, and one of the parties is not moving out just yet because they can't find a place to live. And the reason why they can't find a place to live is because they don't know how to keep their mouth shut. Our next outing will be a very Champions League-like test because we're playing the Champions League finalist from last year at their home, where the fans treat every single game the same way, whether it's a Champions League regular season or preseason game. To use Unai Emery's favorite word, demanding, this has been a demanding preseason. I mean, think about it. A game every 3 or 4 days, travel prior to 5 of those games. Is this our staff, again, carefully curating its preseason to try and emulate the rigors of what's to come later this season? My big question is, does Unai Emery start Martinez, Konza, and Watkins at Dortmund on Saturday, or does he end the game with those 3 players? Does he try to create an established starting group like he did on Wednesday and play them from the beginning in Dortmund? Or does he go with the group that ended the game on Wednesday to try to get their minutes up to that 90-minute kind of standard? And in either case, this might not come down to the manager's instincts or rotational desires. This might actually come down to science. Although I correctly predicted our table position and the exact goal difference from the Premier League campaign prior to last season, I am thinking about holding off on a prediction show until the transfer window closes officially on August 30th. And that's because the market this year has been absolutely incredible. I don't know how it compares to others, but just the business that Atletico Madrid has done is remarkable. And you know, there are domino effects as money starts to move around. And I simply, in my heart of hearts, do not feel as though Villa is done yet. So if we were to land, say, a Joao Felix before the window closes, well, that could be a game changer for us. Not to mention what other teams around us in the Premier League are or aren't doing, because I see a lot of fans of teams that are in our neighborhood panicking over inactivity. So if I'm going to do a prediction show, I want to know what every team looks like as of August 30th. This trip to Dortmund's going to be a very good test. I'm looking forward to it. And then next week, my family heads off to our lakeside cabin because we only get the scraps. And unfortunately, the window of availability was much later in the summer. But hey, I'm not a choosy beggar when it comes to family cabin time. So that means I'll be watching the first game of the regular season at West Ham lakeside. And no matter what happens, I'll be relaxed. I'll even be recording my first show from the primitive conditions of BC's glorious hinterland. Until the weekend, be well, and as always, up the mighty Villa!